400 stanzas. On the Middle Way. With commentary by Gyel-tsap. Chapter 1. Abandoning belief in permanence. The main obstacle to generating effort to gain the paths of the existent is the erroneous idea that what must die will not die. Therefore, by repeatedly thinking about death and impermanence, one should strive to attain these paths, for through familiarity with this it will be easy to understand suffering and so forth as well. Those who are not free from the bonds of the three realms because they cling to things as truly existent and who are in the power of the demon death, have as sovereign the Lord of Death himself. He is the willing ruler of the desire, form and formless realms, and of the three worlds beneath, upon and above the earth. He has no master who commands him, nor does he command others, but carries out the punishment himself. He is therefore referred to as the Lord of Death himself. If those under such a lord, who like a butcher brandishing his sharp knife is engaged in killing, and on whom their life or lack of it depends, do not make effort to gain the paths of the exalted with as much urgent care as though they were already marked by death or their heads were on fire, but instead sleep soundly like Buddhas and foe destroyers, the true vanquishers of the demon death, and if they make no effort to find a means to avert death, what could be more improper, reckless and foolish? Therefore, contemplating impermanence repeatedly, make meaningful use of your leisure and fortune.
It is like the following analogy: a certain minister had failed to please some of the king's torchbearers. Wanting to have him put to death, the torchbearers misled the king, but the minister, suspecting the king might kill him, remained attentive.
Like him, we must take care and pay attention to the means of avoiding death's harm.
It is also like a man who lost his way and, thinking himself safe in a very frightening hamlet in a desolate place, was overpowered and killed. Similarly, if one is careless in the hamlet of the three realms where the Lord of Death's punishment is near, death will certainly overpower one.
Therefore make effort to practice the excellent teaching.
Assertion: the Lord of Death who rules the three worlds does exist, but meanwhile one is life, which wards off death, so while one is alive, there is no need to fear death.
Answer: life does not ward off death because it is doing death's work, since aging and dying are simply preconditioned by birth. All children are in the first place born to die and, like animals led to slaughter by the butcher, it is then their nature to be driven towards death without a moment's respite by aging, sickness and decline. Since they appear to be in the act of dying, like victims in the throes of decapitation, and not in the act of living, such life is not in the least trustworthy. In the life stories of Buddha FHMWy, it says, it is like a messenger who, threatened by a fierce and merciless king that he will be killed unless he arrives at a certain time, keeps on the move and never stops. Similarly, whatever one is doing, whether walking purposefully, strolling, sitting or lying, there is not even the briefest moment when one's lifespan is not decreasing. Therefore, do not trust life. A Paravrajaka wanted to enter her home and was stepping over a camel lying at her door, when it jumped up in fright and bolted. Just as she was in its power, understand that we who have been born are in death's power. It is also like an assassin hired to kill someone but, unable to do so, he kills his employer instead. Understand that what has been born is performing the function of dying and not of staying alive.
Assertion: these days people live to be 100 years old. When 16 years have passed, there are still 84 during which one can first enjoy oneself and then try to ward off death. Since life is long, it is reasonable to place hope in it. Answer: it is most unreasonable. If you see the past as brief and see your future life span differently, not as brief but long, and act recklessly because of such an idea, it is quite unreasonable. The precious Garland says, since the time of one's death is uncertain, thinking of your past and future as equal in length, or unequal in that the past is short and the future longer, clearly indicates that you are frightened of death. It is like a man on a dangerous road who is afraid of robbers but pretends not to be afraid, crying out boldly and singing. It is also like a band of childish people who spent the night in one room in a town. They got up early in the morning and left after defecating in different parts of the room. Only several Brahmins remained behind. The caretaker scolded them, saying, "Remove this excrement, you louts, before I give you a thrashing." It is said they each agreed to remove their own excrement but not the others. To regard one's future lifespan as longer when the time of one's death is uncertain is as irrational as considering one's own excrement cleaner and thinking of it as mine, when it is all equally filthy.
Assertion: though one cannot be certain that the future will be longer, since death is common to all sentient beings, there is no need for one alone to fear it. Answer: that is most unreasonable. If you do not fear death because it is common to other sentient beings too, and suffer when you see the Lord of Death harm one person and not others, but do not suffer when all are harmed, your suffering in the first case is through jealousy. Yet does death cause suffering through jealousy? No, it causes suffering by its very nature. Therefore its commonness does not prevent suffering, and so it is proper to fear the fearful. A householder suffered when the king initially collected a tax only from him, but when it was collected from everyone, he did not suffer. The suffering first was because of jealousy. The suffering of death is not like that, but like this: even if many of one's friends are in hell, it will not lessen the suffering.
Assertion: death does not occur without sickness and aging. As these can be remedied by medical treatment and taking essential nutrients, death need not be feared. Answer: it is unreasonable not to fear death just because sickness and aging can be remedied a little. Though the fact that medical treatment can cure sickness and taking essential nutrients can somewhat retard old age may allow you not to fear them for the moment, there is no cure by any method for the horror of death, the last ordeal, and thus obviously you should fear it. It is like the following analogies: a king's rebellious minister bribed some envoys who had been sent, but when the king himself went to war there was no remedy. When a washerman spoiled some Brahmin's clothes, he was able with skill to reach a compromise, but when he ruined the king's robes, there was nothing he could do to please.
In Candrakirti's commentary, an analogy of contrast is used. The stanza he cites says, when a king's robes are ruined, a plea well couched in poetic words of flattery may be effective. Death, however, cannot be affected by pleas. This shows the need to be extremely apprehensive of death, for though even that which is difficult to remedy can be remedied, one cannot plead with death. Assertion: though death will come and common beings cannot avert it, one does not fear it because at present one has no certain knowledge of it. Answer: it is not difficult to know death. Death is common to all cattle intended for slaughter, and one sees another die. Just so, death also is common to all of us ordinary beings. Moreover, you have seen many die, see many who are dying at present, and will see many die. How can you have no reason to fear the Lord of Death on the grounds that you have not seen death? Consider the fearfulness of death, and instead of acting like cattle for slaughter who, seeing the butcher kill one, wait to be killed,